first documented year of Chinese immigration was 1815, but the first large wave of Chinese immigration was in the mid-1840s, as the Chinese came to California with aspirations of gold and prosperity. Though there was little hostility for the first few years, the Chinese soon became resented. As Charles McLean stated, in short, they worked too hard, often for less pay than others were willing to accept, saved too much, and spent too little. In addition, they looked and behaved differently from the majority population. These seeds of resentment are the roots of what we now know as Yellow Peril, a color metaphor that the Chinese and East Asians in general are a threat to democracy and the Western world's way of life. The idea that the Asian people were yellow can be traced back to botanist Carl Linnaeus, commonly known as the father of taxonomy, who categorized Europeans as white, Africans as black, and Americans as red. Many suspect he chose the color yellow not because of the color of their skin, but rather because many toxic and dangerous plants he characterized were yellow, and he associated similar threats with Asia. Throughout history, all the way to the present, we can see Yellow Peril materialize in many forms, such as legislation like the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, massacres like the Rock Springs Massacre of 1885, and even in popular culture, as seen by the incorporation of stereotypes like yellow skin into the fictional villain Dr. Fu Manchu, written by British author Sax Rohmer. This prejudice was normalized in American society until the 1960s, where the Asian American and Yellow Power movement began to take shape, and soon the Asian American Political Alliance formed, a leader in advocating for not only Asian American curriculum, but also social causes against the discrimination of minorities. Though Yellow Peril has died down over the years because of these efforts, we are seeing it arise again because of COVID-19, a disease that is said to have originated in China. And though the legislative aspect has not come back, the hate and violence against Asian Americans that had been contained is now back in full force.
Asian Americans within the U.S., because they are stereotyped as, either as a perpetual foreigner or a model minority. These can have very complicated consequences during emergency periods such as ourselves, where national security or national health is at risk.
Of course, people are afraid and they're worried about their well-being, and out of that anxiety, I think it kind of uncovers. First of all, it could uncover latent racist feelings against Asians and Asian Americans, or it could just be a diversion from dealing with the anxiety to, again, put the blame on Asian Americans. But I think in either case, it is racist, of course, to blame someone because of their ethnicity for something which they have nothing to do with.
We see in this instance the scapegoating of the Chinese Americans and Asian Americans, rather than Trump and his administration taking stock of their lack of preparedness.
Okay. Why do you keep calling this the Chinese virus? There are reports of dozens of incidents of bias against Chinese Americans in this country. Why do you keep using this? A lot of people say it's racist.
It's not racist at all. No, not at all.
He throws these statements out there, knowing that everybody is going to run around and begin to discuss these issues, while all of his other elements, other issues are completely not discussed or addressed.
It also probably propelled some of this anti-Chinese, anti-Asian racism, and you would not expect that the President of the United States would want to do that.
And you could see some of these protesters that are coming out using one of the most vile languages and vile statements, posters that, again, demonizing the Chinese, demonizing Asian Americans.
We are so much a part of the American mainstream, contributing to the arts, contributing to science, contributing to medicine, contributing to academia, contributing to technology, and beginning now to really have our political voices heard. Why is this happening to us when some of us thought that we were part of the American mainstream?
If people at the top would only say, Asian Americans are not to blame. This is not the Chinese virus, to not label it that way. It's a coronavirus, etc. I mean, these are clear ways that they could set a positive moral and social example. And also, of course, by clearly pointing out and appointing Asian Americans in leadership roles. The face of America is changing, and our leadership has to change to reflect that.
And both sides need, in my opinion, should have a lot of flexibility along with some tolerance toward one another and become friends. And I believe that in itself will deter a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of aggression, whether it be micro or violence.
That due to the pretty robust response by Asian American advocacy groups trying to push this information out there, there has been an awareness of it at the federal level, and sometimes at the state level. There are some regulatory schemes and laws out there for protections, say for hate crimes on the basis of race or national origin, that would address some of the surge that we're seeing with anti-Asian conduct and crimes due to COVID-19. So I would like to see in general, before even getting to emergency, good training and cultural practices and norms within law enforcement, but also in society broadly speaking, to recognize that these things do happen.
All Americans have rights. We have inalienable rights. And that's every American, whether they're Asian American or African American, it doesn't matter. They have inalienable rights, and the right to walk down the street without being attacked is one of those rights.
During these unprecedented times, it's important now more than ever that we come together to work to fight this discrimination.